like to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for January 16th, 2023 council meeting as presented. May I have a mover? Deputy Reeve Faulkner, seconder. Councillor McBurney. All those in favor? Carried. Number 3, I'd like to go to disclosure of pecuniary interests. None noted. Public comment. Opportunity for members of the public to speak to an item of business on the agenda, 2 minutes per person. If you'd like to discuss anything, just come up to the microphone and say your name and where you live, please.
And can you just please turn the microphone on at the top there? You'll see the button.
Reeve and council members. I'm Sheila Willis. I live at 227 Minnie Street. This has to do with the taxes. I think that 20% is a lot of money for this town, and we pay over $4,000 a year already. That's going to put our taxes up $800 more. I don't know how you think that people are going to be able to live in this town. And what are you offering us for this 20% hike? Another thing is closing the pool and fitness area. Do any of you sitting here on council know what this will do to our town? It will affect our school kids, people struggling to lose weight, our people and teens struggling in mental health issues. People need therapy after accidents, strokes, and heart attacks. My husband and I lost a nephew the beginning of December that struggled with mental health. He used the facilities 2 to 3 times a week just to take his mind off everyday life. And there is a lot more people and teens in this town that need this fitness center than you will know. Wouldn't it make more sense to have a little bit of money than none at all?
Thank you. Is there anybody else I'd like to make a comment? Okay, none noted. Consent agenda, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.11 to 5.12, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.13 to 5.313 for information. May I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Van Hitterson. All those in favor?
Can we have some?
Yes, I'll pull some up. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody who sent us emails, letters and phone calls about the situation. Mrs. Willis, thank you for your comments. Everybody has to realize that closing pools, arenas, childcare facilities, etc. will have a devastating effect on the attractiveness of North Huron. People, especially younger people, are looking for more than a place to stay and work. They want a community, they want to volunteer, they play sports, hike and rest. Inflation, high interest rate and low unemployment are hitting the municipality very hard right now. We have brought our expectations to lower the projected budget increase to North Huron staff, and I hope this is reflected in the next draft budget. I also hope that we can look at this as a business, that we have to give things, take things, and find other ways to go to our, to bring this forward to our ratepayers. No? Thank you very much.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. This is 533, the letter from Honourable Steve Clark. This is regarding the, I know we're going to talk about it later in the agenda, but I thought I'd bring it up. I'll probably bring it up both times. In it, it says that if this is something, it's a sad term. Saying if we construct anything that's affordable housing as such, the development charges are exempt. And like, that makes it hard. That means it gets added on to everyone else in the surrounding project, which isn't fair to them. So it's just something that's really bothered me. And what's the answer? The answer is, oh, well, then we won't build any. It gets down to that, and it's just sad. So I'm hoping that they'll come up with some sort of rebate or something to help the municipalities. It's nice to have, attainable housing built, and all of our municipalities have a certain amount of it. So it makes it difficult anyways. And the other one is 535, and it goes along with your comment. Just supporting Councillor Van Hittersman. Like that first figure of 20.6% or something, that's just a starting point. We all start high, and then we have to really get down to it and decide how we can do, what we can cut, how we can save money. So don't be too shocked by that first one. I know we're all shocked when we first see it, but whoa, it just means we have to get down to work and make some changes. And then the pool and any of the other services that we have, like nothing's decided. It's just, everything gets mentioned. That's where we're at, and, I can't give an answer to it, but it's certainly, we have to look at everything. So, thank you, Reeve.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve Faulkner?
Thank you. Through you, Reeve, just a point of clarification. You cited 5.3.5?
Wasn't it that where the letters started showing up?
That was the conservation.
Oh, sorry, 536, pardon me.
Thank you. I wasn't sure what you were speaking to there.
Sorry, Deputy. Yep.
Thank you. Did anybody else have anything they'd like to pull? So we'll pull.
Yeah, so there was no action to be taken,
okay.
so basically you can adopt the motion as currently moved by Councillor Whitfield and seconded by Councillor Van Hitterson.
Okay. So may I have a show of hands for accepting? Carried. Public meetings and hearings and delegations. Clerk Lamb?
Yes, so I guess for the benefit of council and the public, I just want to note that the delegations did reach out to the township today indicating that they are withdrawing their delegation for tonight, given the, in light of the budget constraints of the township. So I guess I'll leave that with council there, but staff will still require direction on what you want to do in regard to museum services.
Okay, thank you. So is there any discussion from, go ahead, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to understand, why they withdrew the delegation. We haven't made any final decisions on budget yet. And right now, the line item on there for the museum is as live and viable as any other item. So just wondering what would have led them to withdraw their delegation.
I can speak, was that proper that I go ahead? I was talking to Mr. Kyvenhoven, and I just want to thank for all the work that they did with that. They just worked hours and hours in his committee, but he said that he couldn't go with having a third party running it, so he left it that way. And then that's sort of what we came back today with, I guess, with the thing that came to our Clerk Lamb. So is there anything you wanted to add to that, Clerk Lamb?
Well, I guess, yeah, so the biggest thing is council needs to provide some direction on what you're doing.
Yeah.
With regard to museum services.
Yeah. So any comments? Deputy Reeve, please.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Reeve. I'm not sure that they clarified in their request to, I guess that came in like they're on the delegation as wanting to be reinstated, and prior to the meeting, they've come and asked to be withdrawn.
Through you, your worship, that's correct. So my understanding is that the intention of their delegation was to have council reappoint them as a committee of council to continue on with the fundraising, or I guess to be reinstated to start fundraising for that project. However, in light of the budget restraints or constraints of the municipality, they've basically withdrawn that request.
Because that would be two different entities there. The one entity was the community, a group finding a way to replace the museum, and it's separate from the fundraising committee. Is it not? I'm just looking for clarification on that, or whether are they just asking to not be a committee of council for fundraising, or is this request coming from the fundraising committee, or was this coming from the citizens group for the museum? There are two different.
So this is through your worship. So my understanding is that this direction is basically coming from the landowner of the building that would be donated, as well as those who were previously appointed to that committee. And so my understanding is basically they don't want to start fundraising if basically budget constraints are going to dictate that the project doesn't go forward anyways. If basically, I guess for council, if council were to decide that you're not in the museum service business, and like the Reeve had indicated, so my understanding is that there's a lack of interest in it being a third party run museum, which means that it's either, I guess, township run or not run at all.
Just to revisit that just one more time.
Yeah.
The establishment of a fundraising group or a council or a committee of council was part of the original contract for putting the museum, going forward with the museum. Does that then preclude them from fulfilling that contract? Like, I'm just not sure what they want. As I say, the last council meeting we had, we were going to decide on the museum. We asked for to wait. Why don't we talk to them when they come here? And they haven't come here. And is this really, if it's just because they're two different things. The committee to fundraise and the committee that wanted to go forward with the contract with the owner and such. So this is actually the contract from the owner saying he wants to withdraw, not because you spoke to the owner of the property. So I'm just trying to get a clarification of actually who's asking and what are they asking for.
So I believe I understand your line of questioning now, I hope. But basically the request is from I guess a combination of the two, because one of the members on that committee is the owner of the building. So basically, my understanding of I guess the email we received today is that if it's not going to be township run, and given the budget constraints, that basically they'll withdraw their request to proceed as a fundraising committee, which in effect renders the agreement with the landowner for us to assume tenancy of that space null and void, because we don't assume that space until the funds are raised and the capital work's complete.
Would that then not just put that motion into a dead motion if like they're making a decision before we've even voted?
Basically, yeah, I guess through you, your worship, to answer Deputy Falconer's question, basically, if council is accepting of the, I guess, intention to withdraw, basically that's withdrawing from the project, which means withdrawing from the scope of the services. So then basically council needs to make a decision of what you're doing for museum service, if anything, right? So that's, the project can't go forward independent of the committee for, to assume the former train station property, which would mean council needs to make a decision of whether you're going to deliver that space, deliver that service yourself, out of what building, what that looks like, or discontinue the service altogether. And basically, we would, whatever direction you provide, we would carry out the next steps for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I understand.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer, you had your hand up?
Yes, through you, Reeve, I'm just wondering, okay, so we're still saddled with the deaccessioning, and does it have to happen this year? Can it be pushed off? And so that means the full fee of it is going to be ours. So we're not going to save, our budget is not going to save any particular money at this point in time. But anyways, if you could just sort of clarify that.
Yeah, so through your worship, to answer Councillor Palmer's question, so the cost to deaccession were always going to be ours. So that is $70,000 in this fiscal year and $70,000 in the next fiscal year. And basically that gets you to deaccession. So it's just going to change, it would change the scope of the deaccessioning, because you wouldn't be deaccessioning to move them, you'd be deaccessioning to, I guess, cease operations of the museum service. As far as whether that can be delayed, I might defer that question to the Director of Recreation, as she'd probably know better than I would on that whole process, and whether that should be delayed or could be delayed, or what that would look like.
Through you, your worship, I would not recommend that it be delayed. The project was on the books, per se, for 2022. We were unable to begin that project, so we did have $70,000 in the budget in 2022. That money will need to be transferred into reserves here at year end, and then the plan was to transfer it back into operations so that we could begin it this year. And I think that we should proceed with that. The facility there is deteriorating, and we have to be aware of that and what impact it may have on the artifacts that's there.
Thank you.
So
Councillor Palmer, go ahead.
Thank you, Reeve. So to you, Vicky. So it's paid for this year. That's what I got out of it. And, okay, if the artifacts stay in the same building, because we don't know what to do with them, what impact does that make?
Through you, your worship, with the deaccessioning, that would be finding new, that's part of that is finding the new homes for it, and going through the whole process. So the process usually entails looking to donate or sell those artifacts to other museums. Usually it is a donation and things. But first and foremost, you have to see if there's anything that's on loan and return that to the proper owners. Then you would have to see what kind of, you'd have to get the basically evaluated and see if they could be sold and or donated, and investigate with the other museums out there if they would be interested in having those artifacts as well. I think there's quite the process. It will have to come back through council to be approved. And
and follow through. And at that point, then council will be provided with more detail as to how it will, how we would proceed and what we would need to do going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I think we're kind of jumping to conclusions here. You know, I haven't been provided any information in order to make the decision or not of whether North Huron wants to be in the business of operating this museum. You know, I don't know if North Huron operating this museum would hit our budget for $5,000 a year or $250,000 a year, right? So, you know, I think we should at least go through the process of working with the committee, fleshing out, you know, the exact details of what their ask is, and then, you know, getting a much more informed picture of what commitment operating that museum would be, right? And then once we've got that, you know, proposal or information put together, you know, then from a budget perspective, which of course we're going through right now, we have then the opportunity of saying, okay, you know, if we take this on, you know, what would that mean to the average taxpayer, right? Would the average taxpayer see $5 added to their tax bill or 50, right? You know, it would give us the opportunity to seek community involvement to say, hey, we know what these costs are now. Is this something that people of North Huron want to take on or not? So I'd rather make a decision based on that kind of that level of detail as opposed to just a high level, probably not, no, right?
Thank you. Deputy Reeve?
Thank you. Through you, Reeve, to answer Councillor Wright's question there. The consideration of going forward was, and budget was all included in the contract from the museum to the municipality as to what they went through and laid out what the operating costs were, what they wanted the municipality to pay for, and the amount was there, including they included the desecession and the operations of the new museum, right down to a finite dollar value. That was the responsibility of the fundraising committee to see if they could fund their portion that they said that they were going to put into the project. The amount that was responsible for the municipality has always been in that contract, and it is in the proposal as it's been voted on twice for the museum. So those asking that we don't know what the cost is, the costs are fine or not. I mean, it's been a year now, so those costs are going to go up, and they have adjusted their fundraising for the cost of living and for the higher increases in project of conveying that project. So I mean that work's already been done, and they were to come here as the committee to ask for a committee of council to go forward. So I mean that work's already been on. It's up to them to come forward to be the committee of council so they can fundraise for their portion, because it had already been established that they were going to be allowed to be a committee of council, or at least we were going to vote on it. They're only coming back because our council went into an election where you have to reinstate committees of council. So arguing on what tax dollars, we've known that for 3 years, what the cost was. What we're lacking here is just their commitment to come here and ask us for a committee of council. So
I think I can clarify a little bit here, Council, is he asked that it not be run by a third party, and that came through in the budget to be run by a third party for to run the museum via a third party. And he wasn't for that. The owner of the building made that very clear to me. And if the council's not for it 100%, and that we're going to put the money in, He just saw was at our last budget meeting, and how those specs were given out about the museum, so that's where we're at. So I take it that's why the committee didn't come forward tonight, asking to be a committee. And so is there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. So yeah, the Committee of Council, just for clarification, because I did read through that report, and well, there was a lot of work went into that, extremely detailed, but the Committee of Council was strictly for fundraising the capital dollars, correct?
So, yeah, through you, Worship, so there was two committees. The first committee that was struck was prepared that report that you saw in your council agenda package, and they were tasked with preparing a number of plans that would basically show council what this proposed relocation could potentially look like. So that included a operation plan of the museum, a fundraising plan, that kind of thing, right? So a number of plans, the operating budget, that's where Deputy Falconer speaks to the overall cost of what it would take to operate that museum. And then they presented that proposal to council. Once they presented that proposal to council, that committee ceased to exist. Later on in the process, because council was accepting of that proposal at the time, the next step was to prepare a fundraising committee for this project. And the purpose of that fundraising committee was to raise dollars in the community to undertake the capital work required for this project in order for the relocation to occur. And basically that is the committee that would be looking to be restruck to fundraise for that capital work. But basically my takeaway from this is they don't want to start that process if council's not accepting of the operating costs after that work occurs, right? They don't want to raise all these funds in the community if after if that occurs, council says, you know what, we're not going to operate the museum anyways, which ties back to why there was the concern about the third party piece, because there's they're desirous of it being township operated.
Councillor Wright?
Yeah, so thanks for that summary. Yeah, so I guess where that lands is council hasn't made that decision, that we're not in the business of providing museum services in this instance, right? That decision hasn't come before council. We haven't decided that.
And that's correct. And basically, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, from them withdrawing their application, they're asking council to do that, right? Because they want the reassurances of whether council is or is not in the business. And if they're in the business, great, you'd appoint a committee of council for them to continue. If you're not in the business, then they need to know that, so they're not going to start their fundraising. So that's what I guess I meant from the beginning of, we require that direction from council of whether, are you in the museum service, yes or no? And we know that if you're in the museum service, based on the proposal, it's recommend, or they have an appetite for it to be township operated, and third party doesn't seem to be an option.
Go ahead, Councillor.
So I don't remember the numbers from the report. Do we know what the annual impact to our operating budget would be if we did operate the museum?
About 48.
Yeah, my recollection is around the 50 mark. And that was in 2020 dollars, 2021 dollars.
2021 is when
So
they-
you're looking likely 50 plus at this point.
Deputy Reeve?
Thank you, through you, Reeve. I suggest we revisit this when the report on this agenda comes before us from the, I believe the, I'll come to it in a minute. But we have an impact study presented to us, I believe, from the Economic Development Officer. Do we not in this? So
Not
that-
in this agenda
Not in this
package,
agenda?
no.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm getting my information that I'm receiving through email and what's on the okay. There is an impact study coming forward to council, I do believe, on, I'm gonna guess a bang for your buck. What is expected or expectations versus going by all of the other museums in the area versus what economic development, what can be I guess, surmised as an outcome of, well, how does it increase the involvement in what your tax dollars do and what you get back from the tax dollar to see whether it's a prudent endeavor? So I'm just confused as whether, because they withdrew, do we have that vote now, or is that going to be on a different meeting, and should that meeting be after we receive that report? I guess to Carson, I guess.
So,
Also-
through your worship, to answer Deputy Falconer's question, so I don't want to take a guess at what the delegates were requesting, I guess, what they were looking for as direction, but I know the landowner is looking for basically council to be in or out because he's holding on to this building, right? So he's looking for, are you going to proceed with this project or are you not? Because I'm holding on to this building and it's costing me money, right? So not to, again, I don't want to speak for them, but I know he has made that comment that he is holding on to this building. And I'm sure would appreciate some direction one way or the other.
But I'm confused as they're asked, as part of that contract was the outcome of the Committee of Council fundraising for the museum. At any time, if that committee foresaw that they were unable to meet their commitments, the contract would fail. It wasn't on whether, I mean, it's kind of the horse before the cart here. I mean, they would have to establish the fundraising and see whether they could raise the money first before it would be null and valid. So right now, they're not wanting to raise money. So I'm just curious as to how we go forward with that, when that was part of the contract that we.
So they don't, through your worship, to answer Deputy Falconer's question, they don't want to raise the money for the capital work if council's not willing to eat the costs for the operating of the museum, right? So there's no point asking members of the community to donate to this project if after the capital work occurs, the operation of it is not going to happen, right? So I guess maybe to word it a different way, is council willing to incur the operating costs of a museum and I guess I believe the agreement would be until at least 2040, right? Are you willing to incur those operating costs for a museum? If so, then I imagine the committee is going to want to fundraise. If not, they're not going to want to fundraise because they don't want to make the effort and draw funds from the community for the project to not go ahead anyways. Is that kind of answer? It's a difference between they're fundraising for the capital and council needs to make a decision on whether you want to incur the operating costs going forward.
It's just coming across with who's going to flinch first. That's what. Like a gunfight. But
I believe what threw the thing out there that got things a little more confused when it came up, that you're going to have a third party, right? That wasn't in the original thing, but when that came up in our thing.
That was to investigate. It wasn't passed. It wasn't. It's an idea.
Mm-hmm. Understand.
So, like it hasn't succumbed the democratic vote yet
Right.
on whether that's going to happen or not. So to base an assumption on it, that's what I'm saying. It's more like a who's going to flinch first here.
C.O. Evans, did you have anything to say?
No, I was just going to clarify, just in terms of, and I think Clerk Lamb has hit it on the nail on the head in terms of, so as far as the project itself, the fundraising committee, I would suggest, is willing to move forward with raising the necessary funds to all the capital work. But certainly the intention is that the municipality will assume the operating costs for the facility. We know those costs are based on the proposal, would 2021, I'm not sure, can't remember the exact date. You know, we know that is going to increase your budget. And that budget increase could start as early as later 2023 or into 2024. So in terms of the whole notion of the third party, Again, that was a suggestion idea, and that was brought forward with the intent to minimize the impact on your budget. But by all means, certainly if council wishes to move forward with the museum project in terms of the fundraising committee raise the money, and council wishes to commit the dollars to provide museum services in terms of operating costs, you are looking at 50,000 plus. So I think that's kind of where you're sitting at this point. And if you're committed to move forward and add this to your tax base, then I would suggest the fundraising committee should be established and move forward. But if this is a service that you do not feel in terms of, question is in terms of are we as municipality going to be in the business of museum services? That's your question.
And his concern was he wants it as like 100%. He doesn't want it a little shaky, that he wants us all behind it, or he understands the predicament we're in now. He understands that. So we have to decide tonight, are we in the museum business or not, I guess he'd say. Do you have a, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rick.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. I just wondered if, I mean, I haven't been part of the discussions, but I'd be a lot, I feel a lot better able to make a decision on that, once we finalize our budget discussions for this year and figure out where we end up. Because there's certainly a lot of moving pieces on that budget discussion now. And those pieces should start to fall into play, I think, over the upcoming weeks. So I don't know if they would entertain that, if they could defer decisions, say, a month till we get through budget, and then be able to make a decision at that point.
Through your review, just in terms of, so there's really no decision for the committee to make in terms of the committee gets established by council?
No, for us to make, for us to
sorry.
make the decision of
Sorry.
because we'll be able to figure out, okay, what is the budget increase going to be this year? We can maybe have a chance to look forward at projects which are coming up in the following years. Are we going to be spending more on projects? Are we kind of going through a hump? Like at the end of the day, I think this comes down to two things. It's one, hard dollars, how much are we spending, but also, B, the impact to the taxpayer, right? So, if we were in a non-COVID, high inflationary universe right now, and we were looking at a 2% budget increase, for example, I think we'd maybe be a lot more willing to take on an extra $50,000 spend on something like this, as opposed to where we are, right? So, if we could have time, say a month, to get a lot further in the budget process, if they'd be willing to hold down that long, I'd be in a lot better position myself in order to make an informed decision at that point. And, the one thing that's going through my mind is I think we're at a very unique time right now with inflationary pressures and everything else. And, this museum potentially would be in town for years and years and years, right? So we may not find the same pressure 3, 4, 5 years from now of carrying this cost that we're facing this year. So I do think we need to take a long-term view and not necessarily just the crunch we're going through this year. Thanks.
So, through your worship, I think there's two things I just want to note in regard to those comments that might be of benefit to council. Is one, so I don't necessarily, unfortunately, based on the direction you've provided to staff on Thursday's budget meeting, I don't necessarily see stuff coming back within a month, right? You've requested numerous RFPs to go out, right? So those RFPs have to be prepared, be released to the industry for a certain period of time, at least generally 2 to 3 weeks, and then come back, and then you wanted all that data. So I don't necessarily see it within this month coming forward based on all the direction that you guys have provided on the last meeting. I might defer to the CEO in regard to timing of some of that stuff. But the other piece too is, and I mentioned before, the owner of the property wants some direction, is holding on to this property. And because he's been holding on to this property in the lease agreement between the township and the landowners, there is a provision there that they can pull the plug on it by December of 2023 should basically things be taking too long, right? And that goes back to the point of they didn't want to hold this building for all this time if the project's not going to go ahead or if council's going to pull the plug on it, right? So I guess in terms of waiting, you can certainly wait, but I imagine, and again, not to speak for the landowner, but he's probably not going to want to wait too long to wait for that decision because he's been holding on to this building for 4 years and paying the property taxes on it, right?
So any more discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, Reeve, I was just wondering, you've had talks with the landowner. Has he given any indication of time frames, waiting, or it has to happen now?
He sees what we're against right now, and that's why he called me to come in and talk to him. And it's either 100% for that we're in the museum business, or he's not going the third-party way. So we have to come to that conclusion for tonight. So, any other comments from council?
Are we allowed to comment if it goes to a vote, before the vote? After you have a seconder and a...
Well, there's no motion on the floor right now.
No, but I
so-
meant if there was, you just alluded to it was tonight, so I would just...
Well, I guess we have to come to an answer.
I would make a comment now.
Oh, okay.
Or make it after the motion, to the motion, but
Okay.
because I don't know the motion,
Okay.
my comments might be all over the place.
That's, I guess, at the discretion of the chair, but yeah,
Right.
generally if someone wants to move a motion and you have further discussion, you're more within your
Yeah.
capabilities of it as council.
So could somebody provide a motion, please?
Or even direction, and I would craft a motion.
Yeah. Direction for clerk. Go ahead.
Excuse me, through you, Reeve, I make a motion that we discontinue the delivery of museum services.
Okay. This is Clerk Lamb's writing that up. Deputy Reeve,
I'll second it.
second it. Just wait and let Clerk Lamb
Then I
read
would
it.
have a comment.
So your draft motion would look something along the lines of that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the discontinuation of the delivery of museum services and for the termination of the museum relocation project. And if that's the direction, there would be things that, so we would want to also terminate that lease agreement and then basically direct for us to, we would continue on with the deaccessioning. And then also the other piece I would note is you would want to thank the members for all their work. So if that's, I guess, so I would recommend that also be added to the motion, if that's. So then, yeah, your motion would be something along the lines of that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the discontinuation of the delivery of museum services and for the termination of the museum relocation project. And further, that council directs for the lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Doug and Deborah Kivenhoven to be terminated. And further, that council directs for the artifacts currently contained in the museum to be deaccessioned in accordance with the deaccessioning policy that was mentioned by the director. And something along the lines of, and further, that council hereby extends its gratitude to the members of the museum relocation project for their work on the project. So if the mover and the seconder are fine with.
Like to amend that for that last point, therefore, thanking the members of the committee. I think it'd be nice to thank the landowner, Doug Kivenhoven, for his patience, because he has been quite amazed by that.
Okay. First and second agree with that? Oh,
I'm good with that.
Edit. Okay.
Conversation.
One over here and then deputy.
Yeah, just through you, Reeve, you know, I wish there had been more opportunity to discuss this matter. You know, I think there's a lot of options that aren't being left on the table that I'd been thinking about. Like, for example, the fact that there's a proposed information center going in there, right? If that could be turned into a information center for all of Northern Huron County, right? Because a lot of municipalities around us don't have anything like that. Potentially, they'd be willing to support the operation of that portion of the building in some way. Also, as far as, you know, we know Huron County runs museum services, right? I don't know if anybody's reached out to them to look at models about, you know, how perhaps a North Huron museum could be incorporated into their operations, if not financially, in some kind of cross, you know, support way. So, you know, I do understand the budget difficulties we're going through, but, you know, on the weekend, I did go back and look at our vision statement, right? And our vision statement is, you know, the Township of North Huron is a prosperous and engaged municipality that welcomes visitors, families, and residents through strong agriculture, development, culture, and tourism. Having a museum in town hits that vision statement in the bullseye. So I don't know why we're making decisions that don't align with our vision statement. That's all, Reeve. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. Comments. Some of the information that Councillor Wright was alluding to, those questions have been asked, and those answers can be attained through staff. Yes, it fits on the mission statement, and we're doing budget deliberations at this time. I just know personally and politically, if I'm going to give consideration to adding to the tax base for social and economic expansion, I find it almost impossible in the same voice be okay with our motions to look at completely removing recreation for a sector of our municipality and go forward with something new. We're looking right now in a budget, we're debating removing services. So I think it would be completely irrational to think that we could go forward with new ones. I think that would be perceived as robbing Peter to pay Paul. So that's just my comments. I just can't see we can go forward on new services when we're looking at taking away existing services for a tax deduction. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer and then Councillor Wright.
Okay, thank you, Reeve. Yeah, I'm very saddened by this. I wish we had more time to look at everything, because, you know, it wasn't that many months ago we said yes, basically yes, we want this project, and then left it up to the committee to come up with the money, if yes or no. So it was in their hands at that point, but we had already said yes. But I totally understand our budget constraints, and that's where it really hurts. But I really wish, I'm not sure why we have to do it tonight. I wish we had more time. And I'm wondering if we should ask the landowner if he could give us a bit more time, you know, whatever time is required from clerk. I don't know. It's, you know, we've already said yes to it. And anyhow, those are my thoughts.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just kind of as response to the Deputy Reeve, it's my personal, so of course we need to continue our budget discussions. I don't think we should be entertaining making cuts to culture and recreation. As we noted in the last budget meeting, that budget isn't the problem. That budget is basically unchanged from last year, right? So I don't think we should be robbing Peter to pay Paul. I think we have to look, right down the barrel of the gun basically and find out the budget line items that are going up. Why are they going up, and what can we do to address it? I don't think we should be cutting from any areas of culture and recreation in order to deal with other issues. Those issues need to be dealt with on their own. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we go ahead with this motion that's been offered. We have it first and second.
So I will read back the motion for council's benefit, but the motion on the floor is that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the discontinuation of the delivery of museum services and for the termination of the museum relocation project. And further, that council directs for the lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and Doug and Deborah Kivenhoven to be terminated. And further, that council directs for the artifacts currently contained in the museum to be deaccessioned in accordance with the deaccessioning policy. And further, that council hereby extends its gratitude to the members of the North Huron Museum Relocation Project for their work on the project, and also to the landowner for his patience with the process.
Thank you.
I don't know the exact protocol of when to ask for a recorded vote. Is it now okay to actually just record a vote? Thank you.
Bear with me here, council. Councilor Wright has requested a recorded vote, so I will now call the vote. So Deputy Reeve Falconer,
Yes.
Councilor McBurney,
Yes.
Councilor Palmer,
No.
Councilor Van Henderson,
Yes.
Councilor Whitfield,
Yes.
Councilor Wright,
No.
and Reeve Heffer.
Yes.
So that vote carries 5-2, with the noes being Councilor Palmer and Councilor Wright.
At this time, we'll go to the clerk's report, 7.1.1. Bill 23 implementation, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. Hannah Holman, please.
Thank you, Council, for having me this evening. I just have my report, not a presentation, but I just have a few speaking points, and then I'm happy to take questions from Council. So the report included on the agenda this evening is just an update on Bill 23. The bill has received royal assent as of November of last year. The report is just a summary of some of the key changes and how these are being implemented by staff. Just to summarize some of the key changes, the bill does remove third-party appeal rights to the local planning appeal tribunals for minor variances and consent applications. Staff have worked to implement these changes by updating our notice templates and our application information forms. Another change from Bill 23 was the removal of the requirement to hold public meetings for plans of subdivisions or plans of condominium. So historically, these public meetings were held at the local council level, and there was a county councilor representative that would attend the local council meeting, just so that when the application proceeded to county council, there was that additional perspective. But now, since there will no longer be the requirement for public meetings, we will discontinue the practice of having a county councilor attend the local meeting. The circulation process will be the same, except members of the public on the notice will be encouraged to provide early written comments, as there will be no opportunity to formally accept verbal comments at a council meeting. Staff, I have discussed this with local staff, and our direction to applicants would be that if they want to make a presentation in lieu of a public meeting, that would be something they would have to request a formal delegation. And then for members of the public, again, since there is no public meeting, there wouldn't be an opportunity for them to provide formal verbal comments that would be counted on the record, but we do note that, again, that opportunity does exist for members of the public to speak to any item on the agenda, but again, it won't be a formal public meeting. And then we also note, too, that often plans of subdivision applications are accompanied by zoning bylaw amendments, which as of current, there is a requirement for a public meeting at the local level. So if we have those concurrent applications, there may be an opportunity to speak to the development, specifically in the zoning bylaw amendment portion rather than the plan of subdivision. The one other change is to site plan control, requiring that development with more than 10 units is required to be exempted from site plan control. At the next council meeting, staff will be bringing a draft updated site plan control bylaw to conform with Bill 23 changes. There were also changes that require that official plans and zoning bylaws are required to permit up to 3 residential units per urban parcel of land. The official plan, as reviewed in 2022, does meet this requirement, but an update to the zoning bylaw is required to meet Bill 23 and also to implement the direction in the official plan. So a staff report requesting that this update be initiated will also come at a future council meeting. So that's anticipated to be the first day in February that council will see that request. One of the other changes, and there was some information on this in the consent agenda regarding changes to the conservation authorities, most related to the planning function, is that Bill 23 removes their ability to comment specifically on natural heritage matters for planning applications, but they are still retain the right to comment on natural hazard matters. So natural hazard would be things like erosion control or flooding, or source water protection is also included in that, versus natural heritage matters would be things like if there would be any impact to any significant wetlands or woodlots from a species at risk or environmental perspective. Historically, and as of current in North Huron, that function was provided by the county biologist, who is a staff member on county staff, rather than the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. So there's anticipated to be minimal impact in North Huron, but otherwise in the county, so in the ABCA watershed in the south portion of the county, that was a function historically provided by the Conservation Authority. So we do anticipate that there will be more of a workload for the county biologist in the county planning department, but not a lot of change for North Huron. I've also included some reference to Bill 109, which again is a separate piece of legislation. At the orientation session in December with council, we did discuss the refund timelines for site plan control applications as well as zoning bylaw amendment applications. Those again are just included for reference and information. And staff do note that as of current, the way Bill 109 is written is that is to be implemented as of January 1st. But we have received correspondence from the province, as included on the consent agenda, that indicates that they intend to delay that implementation date until July 1st of this year. But we haven't seen any official legislative changes. That's just been correspondence from the minister. So we are watching this closely and preparing for either scenario. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned before, the zoning bylaw is proposed to be updated this year. A formal initiation request will be coming in an upcoming report to council. And then staff will also provide a report to council to update the site plan control bylaw. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any good? Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, thank you, Eve. To you, Hannah. I've got a couple. Now, it's written down a minimum of 3 units permitted per residence and residential lot. That doesn't go well. It should be a maximum of, should it not?
So the way Bill 23 is written is you have to permit up to a minimum of 3 residential units on an urban parcel.
That doesn't make sense to me. That means it has to be 3 all the time.
And that is how Bill 23 is written.
So a new lot, say you got an empty lot in Wingham, it is stating that there has to be a minimum of 3 units in there, even though the owner wants to build a house.
Yes, so sorry, I meant to say they are permitted to have at least 3 units.
it'll be a
They may
maximum.
choose to only have 1 or 2.
It'd be
They
a
don't have to.
maximum then,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not real happy, these are just comments, okay? I'm not real happy about the public consultation being sort of shut out. It's not right when the public's voice is not heard. I'm concerned about the natural heritage reviews. I liked it better when the conservation authorities were looking at the matters. When you've got one individual deciding everything, that does not bode well. It really doesn't. Too much power in one person's hands, not good. Yeah, okay. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other questions for Hannah? Seeing none, we'll go, that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the planner dated January 16, 2023 regarding the implementation of Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022 for information purposes. Do you have a mover? Deputy Reeve? Councillor Van Hittersum? All in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. CL 2023-01 draft terms of reference for 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee. We have a mover, a seconder before we go in. Mover, Councillor Wright. Seconder, Councillor Whitfield. I'll just go read this.
Can we have a
Go ahead.
discussion? Yeah, so I, just through you, Reeve, I did go through the terms of reference, proposed terms of reference in great detail, and have had a discussion with some of the people on the homecoming committee. I think in general, they're okay with the terms of reference as laid out by Clerk Lamb. So I just wanted to let the council know that the way the terms of reference are written, it'll be not too onerous to work within the those terms of reference, but still carry on their business in an efficient manner.
Okay. Any other comments? That the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk dated January 16, 2023 regarding draft terms of reference for the 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee for information purposes, and further that the terms of reference for the 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee be adopted as presented, and further that bylaw number 02/2023 being a bylaw to adopt the terms of reference for the 2024 Wingham Homecoming be adopted, and further that the council authorizes staff to proceed with the recruitment processes for volunteer committee members in accordance with the requirements of the Township of North Huron Committee appointment policy, and further that council hereby appoints Councillor Mitch Wright as the council representative to the 2024 Homecoming Committee.
Through you, Reeve, if I may, I maybe would like maybe to amend my own motion, but just the dates that were in the terms of reference, can we, I'm unsure if it's possible that the dates that are in there will allow us to come back for the next council meeting with the list of proposed names so that we can finalize the committee of council at the next meeting. I think they were very close, but that would be my ask, is that we get through that process fast enough so that at the next meeting we finalize the committee of council as opposed to losing an entire month.
So through your worship, I guess to answer Councillor Wright's question, so yeah, I don't see why that would the application form is pulled together, so generally we leave around 2 weeks for that. So even if I think if we were able to get that out tomorrow, we would leave it live for until around January 27th, which would allow for that staff report to come back to council for February 6th.
Excellent, thank you.
I have a mover and a seconder, or, sorry, any other questions on this? Mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Carried. CL 71.3, 2023-02, multi-year accessibility plan, 2023 update, and 2022 status report. The Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk dated January 16, 2023 regarding the multi-year accessibility plan, 2023 update, and 2022 annual status report for information purposes. And further, that the council approves and adopts the multi-year accessibility plan 2023 update and the 2022 annual status report as required by AODA. And further, that the council authorize staff to post the multi-year accessibility plan 2023 update and the 2022 annual status report on the Township of North Huron website as directed in the integrated accessibility standards under the AODA. Are there any questions for Clerk Lamb? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I was just wondering, it goes requests or requirements, I'm not sure. They go pretty far, like hard surfacing trails. What's that? Paving? Amenities along the trails? You know, maybe so, but is that something OADA requests, or is it the Huron County Committee that's requesting that? That just stood right out, and that's going to be expensive. And how far do we go?
Yeah. Deputy Reeve, please.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I read the requirements for the this municipal plan, accessibility plan, and what they were alluding to as to hardpack was if the municipality was to initiate a trail and support a trail, that the trail wasn't just the line that 5 people walk through and put the grass down. That's not accessible by everyone. If you were going to maintain and support a trail system, you can or you don't. I mean, there's no saying you have to. But if you're going to, it's going to have to be a certain width so that everyone can use it, rather than just saying that's just the way people walked out in nature. It's just if you're going to establish one, it has to have certain requirements under the Accessible Act for Ontario. That's all.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Palmer?
Yes and no. I still don't know. Then there has to be a definition of a trail.
There is one.
And we don't know it. I don't know it.
Well, you can look it up in the accessibility.
Like, is it just, like, I don't want to be
No,
I'm not being a problem here. I just want to I need to know things. Mm-hmm. And like the trails, like in Blythe there, where the railroad went through, is that adequate?
Yes, it's hard packed and maintained and graded every year, and wide enough for accessibility for scooters, for bicycles, for anyone. Anyone can use it. And
the trail in Wingham, how is it?
You would have to ask the PUC or Rex that maintain it. I believe it was on the docket in the budget, the money for the trail system in Wingham. Mm-hmm. Bring it up to code. So you would have to ask staff on that one. But I just know if you're going to promote one and own one, but as a municipality, it has to fall under the Huron County accessibility mandate, which is before us.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not saying you have to have one, but it's saying if you're going to have one, there are certain.
Okay. So any other questions with this, please? Seeing none,
no, you still require a mover.
I need a mover, please. Councillor McBurney, seconder. Deputy Reeve. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. Carried. CL 2023-03-22, North Huron Municipal and School Board Election Final Report. Any questions for Clerk Lamb? Seeing none, I need a mover, please. Councillor Palmer, Deputy Reeve. All those in favor? Carried. I missed reading the last part of that.
It's fine, council has the
Okay.
recommendation.
7.2, Finance Department, 7.2.1, FN, Finance is 2023-03, borrowing bylaw. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the Director of Finance Treasurer dated January 16, 2023 regarding the 2023 borrowing bylaw for information purposes. And further, that the Council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw for the February 6, 2023 regular meeting to adopt the borrowing bylaw. Any questions for our CAO Evans? Seeing none, a mover, please. Councillor McBurney, Councillor Wright, all those in favor? Carried. Finance 2023-02, interim tax levy bylaw. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby requires a report from the Director of Finance Treasurer dated January 16, 2023 regarding the 2023 interim tax levy for information purposes, and further that the Council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw for the February 6, 2023 regular meeting to adopt the interim tax levy bylaw. Again, any questions for our CAO Evans? Councillor Palmer?
I don't know whether to smile or not, but do you know what your levy is going to be for that point? Or
Through you,
an
Reeve.
estimate?
So it's based on the previous taxation year,
Okay.
and it's a percentage. So it enables, so the bylaw enables the staff to proceed with issuing interim tax notices
Something, yeah.
based on the previous. After council has adopted the bylaw, then we will, once council has approved the budget, then we would be issuing final tax notices.
Okay.
Any other questions? May I have a mover? Deputy Reeve, Councillor Whitfield, seconder. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Carried. Recreation and Community Service Department, no report. Public Works, Facilities, Fire Department, Office CAO. Now we move down to Correspondence, number 8. Number 9, Council Reports. 9.1, Reeve Activity Report. Not really a whole lot going on with just the budget going on now. So I know I mentioned last time, I believe, about just how quickly the Public Works people got the place cleaned up in both Blythe, East Wallinosh, and Wingham was very much appreciated. And just seeing the pictures, it was, people couldn't believe the snow that we had here. Council members' reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards, committees. Deputy Reeve, please.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. Being that none of the appointed committees of council have had a meeting that I'm pertaining to, the only comment I have was I'd like to congratulate the Blythe Broomball League this weekend of putting on another excellent broomball tournament that took place Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I was up there on 2 different occasions watching the games, and I said the lobby was full, and it incorporated games from both the men's division and the women's division and also I take great pride in that they actually had another edition of Elite Women's Broomball, which there's been for quite some time an elite formation of the men's league that plays interprovincially. I'm glad to see that there's an elite women's organization, and they're looking quite healthy. And I can say that I played broomball for 20 years, but I never played it as well as I saw anybody playing it on the weekend. I can guarantee that they've come a long way in their skill set since I was strapped on a pair of broomball shoes. So I just want to congratulate them on utilizing the arena for the full weekend and fulfilling their need. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from members? So no comments by members. Okay, 9.4, notice of motion. Any notice of motions, please? Seeing none. Sure. Bylaws. 10.1, bylaw number 02-2023, terms of reference for 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee. May I have a mover? Councillor Wright, called by Councillor Whitfield. All those in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 03-2023, tender award, house and dam decommissioning. May I have a mover?
If I may read first, you know, I maybe should have covered this under pecuniary interest. Maybe after the meeting or after the fact, I can get some guidance on whether it is a pecuniary interest conflict or not. On this item, I think I'll abstain just until I have that direction, if that's okay with you. The one thing, though, I did read through it, and forgive me, I'm a contract manager, so I'm particular. I noticed in Article 1, it was specific to say, shall not start construction work until all the approvals have been made. And just a suggestion, I wonder if wording should be put in to added to that, and shall not occur any cost. Because I assume that clause is put in to protect the municipality against the vendor starting work and then the approvals not having, and then we're on the hook for stuff. So I'm not even going to really make that motion. It's just from my own experience on projects that haven't gone well, that it might help cover the municipality if that was the intent of that article.
So I guess I do want to touch on your first comment, and just so procedurally, an abstention is just a no vote.
Oh.
Or if the only way you can not vote on a matter is if you have a declared pecuniary interest, and then you wouldn't participate in any part of the discussion.
Okay.
So I guess I do want to make that clarification. The other piece too is, staff can't advise a member of whether they have a conflict, or another member can't advise of whether they have a conflict. The way the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act is written is basically the members are supposed to be in the best position to determine whether or not they have a conflict.
Okay.
And then there's also the Integrity Commissioner you could reach out to too.
Okay.
So I do want to use that
that
as a training exercise too for this new council here. I think it's worth noting too.
Okay.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Dave?
No, through your revive, just in terms of, but he could declare pecuniary interest prior to the vote in this instance. So if you wish to, procedurally, the pecuniary interests are declared at the start of a council meeting.
Yeah.
But I mean, in light of the situation, if you wish to, I'm not suggesting you need to or have to, but if you wish to, you could complete that, we would document that, and then we would proceed with the vote.
Okay. And so then there's a form that gets filled out, and then procedurally too, best practice is you would turn your chair around and not participate in any part of it.
Okay. Okay, I think then it's probably just safe if I do declare a pecuniary interest. I didn't really have any comments on voting for or against this, so that's why it was really just a information item.
I want to thank Clerk Lamb and CAO for the clarification there. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor McBurney, Deputy Reeve, all those in favor? Carried. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, February 6, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the North Huron Town Hall Theatre. Are there any other announcements anybody would like to make? Seeing none. Other business, none noting. Closed session and reporting out. May I have a mover? Deputy Reeve? Seconder? Councillor Van Hittersum? That the council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at
7:20 p.m.
7:20 p.m. to an in-camera session closed to the public under Section 23(9)(2)(b) of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, recommended candidate, Director of Public Works and Facilities. And further, that CAO Evans, Clerk Lamb, HR and Health and Safety Coordinator Ledo, and the preferred candidate remain in attendance.
So you just got to put it to a vote now.
All those in favor?